What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Monte Poker vlog number 54. Hope you guys are ready for this absolutely insane episode I'm about to drop on you. Like, this is crazy. You're from all fronts. It's just nuts. Anyhow, before we get too deep, this intro is going to be very long. I'm going to bring you guys up to speed on last year's closing bankroll status, our new goals for 2025 moving forward as far as poker, bankroll, and all that stuff is concerned. For those of you that are just here for the poker, feel free to skip ahead. I will leave it in the timestamps below so you don't have to go through all this nonsense if you're not interested in it. But to the OGs on the channel that started with us while we were grinding out our bankroll from pennies on the dollar, I got an update for you. All right, so first things first, apologies for not updating you guys before. I think we may have stopped doing the bankroll update around August and September. I started to fall behind on videos, was skipping episodes because some were taking longer than others, was having issues on a technical standpoint with some of the videos. So because of all the jumping back and forth, I just stopped doing the bankroll update because the sessions were on different dates. So, you know, our chart wasn't following its natural progression. The plan was to get caught up. I even took the entire month of October off to get caught up, but those videos are still in my backlog. And then we hired an editor. When I hired the editor, we skipped even further forward. So still have those videos left pending, but it's been so long now that screw it. We'll just give you guys the update as far as the bankroll, and eventually when they come out, they come out. Anyhow, closing 2024. Switching screens now. So over here to my left over here, we have our year closing stats. So our overall goal for 2024 was to grind our bankroll up to 10K. We started literally with $200, willing to invest some of our weekly money from our normal paycheck to help build the bankroll if we needed to dip into it. Luckily, we didn't have to do that. We hit our goal in the middle of the year, went to Vegas, just dumped $5,000 and left it out there and got totally destroyed. Then the goal coming back was to build that back up. Took us almost until November to actually get close to that goal. We got pretty close to 10K, got below 9K, and then at the very end of the year, right before the year ended, we jumped up to 11.8. So we ended up hitting that milestone. I didn't really care how many hours it took. It was just give me enough of a bankroll that I have a cushion to keep on playing, even if we lose a couple sessions, and to be able to move up slower in stakes, right? That was the goal. Absolutely killed it. We played a total of 103 sessions, averaging $23 an hour, and our overall profitability ratio was 64%. Not bad, right? If we look at this other chart over here on the right side, most of our months were pretty profitable. You know, our smallest month looks like February and August, where we only made, you know, $400 to $700. Our biggest months were in March and April, where we cleared over 4 and 3K. And then obviously the month in June in Vegas just absolutely decimated. And this is just cash wise, by the way, guys. We played a bunch of tournaments and actually made a good amount of money in tournaments, but I don't count those for the vlog because this was a cash game bankroll that we were trying to build up. I consider the tournaments just for fun. Outside of that, we had one other losing month in September, but we were only down about 500. We were down way more than that. We got the negative amount closer to even, so that was a good month overall still. And then, like I mentioned, we didn't play in October. So overall, pretty solid year, making 11.5. And as far as the vlog was concerned, my goal was very simple: make this week's vlog better than last week's, whether that was better soundtracks, better microphones, my actual commentary just being more animated and energetic in it, improving the assets and the layouts and, you know, the cards that are popping up on the screens, starting to add animations, any of that sort of thing. Just whatever we possibly could, just do it better than the week before. And I think we did pretty well. We were able to hit 1,000 subscribers within a year on the channel. Now ads on the YouTube channel, it's growing a lot week over week as far as the views that we're getting. And I'm just gonna keep that momentum going forward. I don't wanna set a timeline or milestones for I wanna reach X amount of subscribers by this time, because, you know, I can't control how many people watch the videos or subscribe to the channel. I can control what I do every week on the video, right? So me just improving the vlog is something I have control over. How many people watch the vlog, I think, is just going to be a bad metric and set ourselves up for failure. So as far as the vlog's concerned, I have ideas of things I want to incorporate. One of the big ones being get an editor, and we were able to do that within the year of starting the vlog. And that was something that I didn't think I'd be able to do until year 2 or 3. So even the loose milestones we're hitting very quickly. I'm getting really excited for the stuff that we're doing. We blew past all of our goals that we were going for in year 1. As far as goals for 2025, my goal is to try to make $5 grand a month playing poker at whatever stakes that we're playing. That's an absolutely insane goal, because last year the goal was to make 10K for the year, and now I'm shooting for half of that per month. Right now we're only playing once a week. Gonna try to up that to twice a week, or at least go out of town once every 2 to 3 weeks, hopefully every 2 weeks, but at least once a month. If we do every 3 weeks, it might line up that, you know, that happens twice in 1 month, and play for the whole weekend, either down in LA or up in San Francisco. For those of you that don't know, I am in California. It's not too far of a drive for us, and as long as we have a profitable weekend, we should be able to cover the expenses of staying in a hotel for 2 nights and 3 days. The reason we want to get 5K a month is because I would really like it if by summer we were able to get onto some bigger games on some streamed platforms, because I feel like having that kind of exposure is going to be really good for the channel and help us jump up a level. That being said, let me get you up to speed on where we're currently at on the challenge. Looking over the stats on this side, this is year to date from January 1st to January 26th, which is when this vlog is coming out. I know that's almost a month from today as far as when the video is posting, but you know, from when the actual footage is, the footage is from the 30th. So we played a total of 8 sessions. Our total profit is 8,580. Yeah, we blew our goal way out of the water. And then if we jump over to the screen on the right, these are all the sessions that we've played. Some of these are in December, but January 2nd, losing session, we got the deficit up to negative $50. After that, on the 9th, we made 1,800. 16th, we made 600. The 23rd, we made 1,200. And this is when we took off to San Jose. We played at Bay 101 up there. Played Friday the 24th and made a little under 500. Played again the 25th, made 1,600. Played again the 26th, made 1,300. And then we came back home that Sunday, hung out with family for a little bit and said what's up. And then we ran over to the Shoe Mash and made another 1,400. We were right above our goal of 5,000, but I was really concerned that if we had a losing session at the end of the month, because the Thursday for the Outlaws game fell within that threshold, I didn't want to be below the mark. And now that we hit this, we're either going to, you know, lose 1,500, make 1,500, depending on how the night goes, and be right above 5,000, or potentially even hit 10,000, which would be double what our goal was for the month. Absolutely sick. Cannot wait for it. So sorry for the super long intro. That's pretty much how we closed out the year for 2024 as far as bankroll and our goals and milestones. I got you guys up to speed with 2025, and from now on moving forward, I will do the bankroll update at the end of every video like we're used to, and keep you guys up to speed for what our goals are moving forward and if we're hitting any of those goals. So for now, all the live streaming stuff set aside, just gonna try to figure out a way to get more sessions in per month, try to get as close as we can to making $5,000 a month. If we don't hit it, we don't hit it, but that's gonna be the goal. I'm not gonna let it derail us or tilt us or, you know, play wild just to try and hit that goal. We wanna do this playing positive EV poker. That's how we originally built up our bankroll. That's how I want to continue building the bankroll moving forward. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for being here. Shout out to all the OGs. Appreciate your time and support. Let's jump into the session. As per usual, the game starts off with a $300 cap, so everybody buys in for $300, and we get situated with the dealer button and go off to the first hand of the night. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the first hand of interest here, we look down at pocket nines on the button. I did straddle for $6 and decided to bump it up an additional 20, trying to thin the field a little bit. Pocket nines is a good hand, but it definitely needs some protection. Unfortunately, we get 3 callers, so we're going to this flop 4 ways, $104 in the middle, and the board runs out 10 ace 9 with 3 diamonds. Typically, I'd like to err on the side of caution with 3 diamonds on the board, considering we're playing this pot multi-way. It's very possible somebody has a flush already, and if they don't, there's plenty opportunities for flush draws to get there. But considering that the game just started and everybody is only about 300 deep, I don't really see the point in trying to tread cautiously. We have a set, it's a pretty strong hand. If somebody already has the flush, we still have outs. So I'm gonna set us up for a pot sized jam on the river. I decide to bet $50 here, about half pot, hoping a king or queen of diamonds will come along for the ride, or potentially a non-believing ace. We get a call from Mikey in the big blind, and all the other players get out of the way. So we're going to the turn with 204 in the middle, and the king of clubs is not necessarily a great card. The straight just got there, but it's not a diamond, and we were planning on going all in on any non-diamond. So we're sticking to our plan. We go all in for 173. Mikey puts in the call, so we're going to this river with 550 in the middle. Keep him black dealer, and we get a black queen of clubs, which actually looks like a terrible card because now there's 4 to a straight on the board. Luckily, our opponent flips over queen 9, holding the queen of diamonds. My man Mikey was chasing the flush and caught 2 pair on the river, but unfortunately for him, it is no good. Always nice to start the vlog off with a win.
Shortly after that hand, we saw a few all-ins on the table. People were trying to get into flips so we could start increasing our stack size. This is a 1-3 game that starts off with a $300 cap, but it is also a match the stack game. So after people start building up some chips, this 1-3 turns into a much higher stakes game, as you guys may have noticed in past videos. This week is no exception. For this next hand, we pick up queen 9 suited on the big blind. There's a raise by a middle position player to $25. I go ahead and put in the call, and then Under the Gun decides to come along for the ride as well. 3 of us going to this flop, which comes out queen 6-3 rainbow. We flop top pair in a backdoor flush draw, but our kicker is so-so. I want to see what the pre-flop aggressor does, so I decide to check. Player after me checks as well, and then we see a $50 bet come in. We can't be folding top pair just yet, so I do put in the call, and to my surprise, the opponent in the middle puts in the call as well. 225 in the pot, and the 8 of spades hits the turn. This doesn't really change much on this board here, but I am very concerned that the player in the middle called the $50 bet. We're holding a queen, so it's hard to put him on top pair, and there weren't really any draws available on the flop besides 4-5 suited, so I think our opponent might have a set here. So I decide to check here, and to my surprise, the opponent in the middle puts in a check as well. And then my man Connor decides to blast off here for 275. This bet seems really suspect. It doesn't feel like our opponent is going for value. It seems like he's just trying to end the hand as soon as possible. And considering there's not a lot on this board, I'm not too sure what he's trying to get protection from. So I start considering the hands that he could play this way. I'm thinking over pairs and ace queen would make a lot of sense to play this way, maybe even king queen suited. And then there's a couple of bluffs he could be doing this with, ace king, maybe even a hand like pocket 9s or pocket 10s. But he did put over half of his money in the pot already, so I don't know. I just feel like it's really hard for this to be a bluff, and I'm still concerned with the player behind me. So I do decide to just let this one go, and to my surprise, the player in the middle folds his hand as well. Not sure about how I played this one, to be honest. Let me know what you guys would have done in the comment section below. For this next hand, we look down at 9-10 suited in the small blind of the spade variety to be exact. Felix opens to $25 on the cutoff, Anthony puts in the call, and while suited connectors are good, I typically don't like to play them out of position, but Felix just bluffed our socks off in a hand not too long ago, so there's blood in the water and we're coming for revenge. Going 4 ways to this flop, which comes 3 ace jack with 2 spades. Absolutely phenomenal board for us. We have a flush draw with a backdoor straight draw as well, and to make things even better, Felix is a pretty snug player, so an ace high board is absolutely smashing his range. So I go ahead and put in a check here, hoping that he takes the bait. He does not disappoint and fires out for 175. He's only got about 100 left, so I put out a $400 bet, trying to get the rest of the money in. Fadi gets out of the way, but Felix puts in the call. $620 in the middle, and the turn brings us an 8 of diamonds. Absolutely phenomenal card for us. We now have an open-ended straight draw along to go with our flush draw, and then we absolutely smash it on the river with the 6 of spades. Felix flips over ace jack for flop 2 pair, but it is no good. For this next hand, we look down at the Snowmen Under the Gun, and I decide to put in a $15 raise. Just starting to build this pot in case we do catch a set on the flop. We end up getting 2 callers, so we're going to this board with $45 in the middle, and the board comes out 7 queen 5. Brian checks and Anthony decides to continue here for 30 bucks. I decide to put in the call, not because I think our hand is good, but because I have malicious intentions. Brian puts in the call as well, so we're gonna go 3 ways to the turn with 135 in the middle. The 4 of clubs is often gonna favor me over either one of our opponents, considering we're holding 2 8s. To my surprise, Brian fires here for $85. Anthony gets out of the way, and when the action gets back to me, we're obviously going to put in the call here. And now we get the 3 of spades on the river. This is a pretty scary board considering there's 4 to a straight out there. Regardless of what our opponent does, I'm going to apply maximum pressure here and put in either a big bet or a very chunky raise. The action checks over to me. I fire out for 200, and it doesn't take very long for Brian to put in the fold. Always feels nice scooping these good sized pots with a bluff. This next hand, we looked down at King, Queen of Hearts in the cutoff. There was a $15 button straddle. Brian puts in the call, so when the action gets back to me, I decide to just flat call the $15 here. Typically, I'd like to raise with this hand since it is so strong and we are in position, trying to isolate either with the button or the person that called in the middle and get the blinds out of the way. But the person in the middle right now is Brian, who is an absolutely unhinged savage on the felt. If you were here for last week's episode, you may have seen his 8-6 offsuit hand, and this week is no different. He's been going all in pre-flop with Jack 5 offsuit, putting $500 raises into pots with $120 in them, shoving for thousands of dollars into pots with $300 or $400 in them with just a draw. And to be honest, I don't really want to mix it up with him. If we put in a raise now, he might look up from his phone and actually start playing poker. Yes, I do realize this is playing scared, but if Brian gets felted, he's just going to pull out more money, and if I lose everything, I have to go home. Not saying this is the right way to be thinking about it, but just giving you guys my honest thoughts at the time. Anyhow, back to the poker. There's 5 of us going to this flop, so the pot is actually short $15, but we'll just run as is. The board comes out 10-9-4 with 2 clubs. We have absolutely nothing besides just a gut shot here. Action checks to me, I check it back, button checks as well, and we go to the king of diamonds on the turn, and now Brian decides to start betting. He throws $50 out there, and with top pair and a straight draw, I'm not going to go anywhere, so we put in the call. Action folds over to Connor, and he decides to put in the call as well. 210 in the middle, and we bink the Jack of diamonds on the river. To my surprise, Connor now fires for $225 here in early position. Brian folds pretty quickly, and when the action gets back over to me, I need to think this over for a second. I'm definitely not folding our straight here, but my question is, can we get called by worse? Connor fired for a good amount, so I think a lot of the time he's just going to have a queen here and we're going to chop. But is it possible that he has ace queen? Unless it's ace queen of clubs, I highly doubt it, because I don't think he would have called a turn for $50 with just a gutter ball. I can, however, see him making this bet with a missed flush draw or some sort of 2-pair combination, maybe king jack, king 10, potentially even jack 10. And unfortunately, I don't think any of those hands are going to call if we put in another raise, considering there's a 4-liner to the straight. So eventually I just decide to put in the call, see what our opponent has. It looks like he had top pair as well that he was trying to turn into a bluff on the river. Nice try, Mr. Connor. If we didn't have the straight, that definitely would have worked. On to the next one. For this next hand, we open a bit wide here, looking down at 3-5 suited under the gun. Probably shouldn't be playing this hand out of position, to be honest, but here we are. Connor raises to $50 on the low jack. Brian calls the 50 on the button, and when the action gets back to me, since we are closing the action here, I decide to get a bit more out of line and put in the call. We check in the dark as the board runs out 9-3-8 with 1 spade, $150 in the middle, and the action is on Connor. He takes his time assembling some chips and eventually puts in a $65 bet. Brian puts in the call on the button, and at this point I'm pretty convinced that Connor has a pretty big pair, either aces, kings, or queens. Jacks and 10s are going to be possible some of the time, but it just felt very strong at this point. I guess he could also have ace king as well, but if he continues betting on the turn, then I think we can discredit that hand. Brian calling means absolutely nothing. He could have 4 high, he could have aces, you really never know with this one. So keeping all that in mind, I do decide to float one more street here, seeing if we can pick up a spade, a 3, or a 5, and by some freaking miracle, we get a 5 of hearts on the turn. I get sneaky and decide to check it here, and unfortunately, the action checks all the way through. We get a king of spades on the river. I check it one more time, and then Connor decides to fire 225 here, and this is where things get really annoying. I was planning on check jamming on almost any river here, but when Connor bets 225 out of his $400 stack, I found it really suspicious. If he had jacks or queens, he would not bet the king, and if he had aces or ace king, I feel like he would have just jammed for a slightly over pot size bet. Either way, I can't get away from this. I am not going to put in the raise, so I do just call instead, and Connor does in fact have pocket kings for the rivered set. Almost cracked Connor's kings, but the better hand won in the end. For this next hand, there's a $15 button straddle by yours yours truly, and we look down at Queen 9 offsuit. Brian raises to 30, and since we already have $15 in there, I come along for the ride. And that's when the small blind Mr. Mike decides to raise to 75. Brian calls the 75. And now I'm in a pickle because this hand is not very good, but it's only costing me an additional $40 to make potentially 225. So I don't really think we can fold here when we have position. So I end up putting in the call for $75, really hoping that we flop either 2 pair or a straight, because I don't know how we're really going to navigate this hand post flop. The board runs out 7, 4, 9 with 2 spades. Mikey continues for $125 here, and Brian calls the 125. We did flop top pair, but I highly doubt that it is good in this spot. That being said, I am thinking that Mike has a pretty big pair, which means I don't think it's very likely that he has a flush draw in this spot, meaning we can now pick up any 9 or any queen to improve our hand, or we can bluff on any spade that hits the turn. Brian obviously came along for the ride, but I have no idea where he's at in the hand. So we put in the call for 125, $600 in the middle. When the turn comes in ace of spades. Neither of our opponents seem to like this card because they both check it over to me, which is the ideal situation because now we can represent the flush. Go for about a half pot size bet here of 325. Mike thinks it over for a second and puts in the call. Brian gets out of the way, and we have a massive pot brewing of 1250 as we go to this river, which brings us a deuce of clubs. Mike checks it over to us, and I go into the tank for quite a while here. I'm honestly surprised that he called the 350 on the turn, and while I thought the spade was a good card for us, I now realize the ace of spades was actually a bad card for us because now our opponent knows that we weren't drawing to the nut flush draw on the flop. And if Mike has aces here, he is absolutely never going to fold. So at the time, I really wasn't sure what to do in this spot. I just had a gut feeling that if I went for the bluff and shoved here, it was going to get snap called. I decided to wave the white flag and just check this back. Mike flips over pocket kings with the king of spades, which makes a whole lot of sense. There's only 1 over to his pair on the turn, and he turned the nut flush draw. Not sure if the bluff would have gotten through. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. We have an absolute limp fest for this next hand. There is a $12 button straddle, and most of the table comes along for the ride. When the action gets back over to me, I'm going to go for a squeeze here with ace 4 suited. For some reason, I chose $40 as my squeeze size, which I don't really think is going to get anybody out of the hand because it's not big enough. And you know, as you would expect, we ended up getting called in 4 places. So we're going to go 5 ways to this flop here. $200 in the middle, and the board runs out 3, 3, 10 rainbow. Not really much going on for us here, so I decide to check. Mike puts in a bet for $40, and I'm just going to float 1 street with our ace high here. He could have a 10, he could have a small pocket pair, he could have ace high himself. So when the ace of clubs comes on the turn, I decide to check it to see if Mike wants to take another stab at it. He doesn't seem to like the ace because he checks it back, and now the 5 of spades hits the river. I don't think he would have checked back the turn if he had a 3 or an ace, so I do expect our ace to be good a lot of the time here, even though we just have a 4 kicker. And if he does have an ace with a bad kicker himself, we're most likely going to be chopping because there is a pair of 3s and a 10 on the board. So I go for a small bet of 125, trying to get a call from a non-believing 10. Unfortunately, Mike lets it go, but we are able to recover some of our losses. A lot of repeat hands today. We look down at 3-5 suited. This time in the cutoff, there's a $15 button straddle, and I'm more than happy to come along with this hand in later position. 4 of us involved, and the flop comes out deuce ace 5 with 1 diamond. We have a pair, we have a gut shot, and a backdoor flush draw. I bet 15, and Connor raises us to 50. Everybody else gets out of the way, and I decide to call the additional $35. The turn comes a 3 of hearts, and Connor checks it over to me. I'm getting mad deja vu vibes right now. This seems very identical to the hand we played earlier. I really hope this man doesn't river a set on us once again. Anyhow, we're gonna bet here, and I decide that $50 is a good number to bet. Connor doesn't take very long before putting in the call, and we go to the river, which brings us a 5 of hearts. I'm pretty sure our 2 pair was good, but we got some extra insurance now that we have a boat. Kept it pretty cheap on the turn, and I'm definitely going to size up here on the river. So I go with a bet sizing of $200, hoping that Connor keeps us honest with just an ace here. He does put in the call, and we show him the bad news to take down this pot. Also disregard the graphic, it should say plus 345, not plus 120. Moving on to the next one. There's a $15 button straddle on this hand. Brian raises to $35. Two players call behind me, so when I look down at 3-6 suited in the cutoff, I put in the call. Shelby puts in the call, and then the big blind comes along for the ride as well. 210 in the middle, and we go to this board run out. That comes to 3-4. The action checks over to me, and with middle pair and a gut shot to the straight, I think this hand is worth betting since nobody seems to be interested. I fire for $100 and we lose the button and the big blind, but Brian puts in the call. The two remaining players fold as well, so we're going to go heads up to this turn with 410 in the middle, which brings us the 6 of diamonds. Not the card we wanted to hit because now there's 4 to the straight out on the board, but considering Brian is the only remaining player in the hand, I think 2 pair is going to be good here a lot of the time, so I do decide to go for a bet. I fire $300 here, and it doesn't take very long before Brian announces 5,000. I'm not even sure if he has 5,000 behind, but he definitely has over 3,000, so he's well over covering me, and I am absolutely sick to my stomach. Against any other player, this is a snap fold, but against Brian, due to how many hands he plays and how wide his range is and his willingness to just bluff people out of a pot with absolutely nothing, it's very hard to fold in this spot. He could have a straight, he could have a worst 2 pair, he could have a flush draw, or he could just have 9 high. You never know with this man. We're obviously ahead of the flush, and unless he has 6-4, we're ahead of all possible 2 pairs. We're losing to the straight, but we do have outs to the full house. Eventually, I say to heck with it, let's gamble. I put in the call, and we go to this run out with almost $4,000 in the middle, biggest pot of my life, hoping to pair up on the river, and the river is a 5 of diamonds. I don't expect it to be good. I'm hoping that we're at least going to chop here. Brian flips over 5-7 of hearts for the nut straight, so that 5 on the river did not save me. So not only was this the biggest pot I've ever played for in my life, it is now the biggest pot we've ever lost in our life, totaling a total of $1,847 that we just absolutely dusted. Luckily for Brian, Fadi's on the other side of the table and took it upon himself to help Brian sort out his chips. Nice hand, sir. Well, the night is too early to go home just yet, so following that absolute tragedy, I added on for $2,000 and the poker continues. For this next hand, we look down at Queen Jack offsuit in the hijack. There's a $30 open from Brian, and we are definitely trying to get our money back now that we have a fresh stack. One caller in between, and we're going 3 ways to this flop, which comes absolutely phenomenal. Jack 5 Jack. Brian checks and Anthony leads out for $25. I don't really see much of a point in raising here. There's not too much on this board, so I'd basically be announcing that I have a jack, and I would really like it if Brian re-raised here. So we just call the 25 and Brian comes along. Unfortunately, no raise. A 3 of hearts comes on the turn and the action checks all the way around. Normally I'd start betting at this point, but I'm really hoping that Brian catches up or just senses weakness and starts blasting off. So in this instance, I did decide to just check it back and hope he catches up on the river. And the final card is the King of Spades. Brian hits us with his infamous $5,000 bet. We still have trips, and at this point, I only have one question for myself, and it is, are you sure? This is the exact situation we were trying to get ourselves into to try and make up all the money we lost in the last hand. The last time he shoved for 5,000, he had the nuts. I was expecting a $300 to $500 bet here, but I was not expecting him to put his entire stack in. Yes, I saw him do something similar to Fadi with just a heart draw on the turn. Yes, I just saw him give Shelby a couple thousand, getting snapped off by Shelby's pocket 6s in a similar situation, but for some freaking reason, I feel like he has pocket 3s. The check back on the turn would make a lot of sense if he boated up. I wouldn't put it past him to call the flop with just an underpair, and even though he's been tossing money all around the table to everybody but me, I feel like this time he just has it. But given the hands he's been showing up with tonight, it's very possible that he has a jack with a weaker kicker, maybe even just a pair of 5s, a pair of 3s, or a pair of kings. So ultimately I did put in the call, and I was completely wrong. Our opponent does not have pocket 3s. He has pocket kings. I'm about to call my aunt because she has a house cleaning service, and apparently I am a professional duster now. Our last record was completely shattered within 10 minutes for biggest pot we've ever played and biggest pot we've ever lost. Rather unfortunate, and looking at it from a positive EV standpoint, which is how I used to play all the time when we started this channel, making a $1,900 call into a pot that has
with less than 200 in it does not seem like a profitable call long term. But I got blinded by the fact that Santa Claus is sitting in seat 8 and is just dumping chips onto people's laps left and right. But it looks like we've been too much of a degen this year because all we got was a bunch of coal instead. We add on for 2,000 and move on to the next hand. For this hand, Under the Gun opens to $10. Anthony calls the $10 in middle position. We're in the low jack and decide to bump it up to 40. Fadi's in the small blind and calls the 40. Wheezy's Under the Gun and also calls the 40, but then Anthony decides to re-raise to 225. Game's been playing pretty big, so it's possible he's going for a squeeze play here with some suited Broadway cards, or he just has aces, one or the other, who knows. Anyhow, we put in the call. Fadi and Wheezy get out of the way, so we're going heads up to this flop with my boy Anthony with 590 in the middle, and the board runs out 448. Anthony throws out a $100 bet, and this just sucks. There's no ace or king on the board to help us get away from this, and to make things even worse, Anthony threw out an abysmal bet that is impossible not to call, and I want to find out if we're good or not right now. I don't want to be taken to Value Town for 3 streets, so I decide to re-raise to 300. If Anthony has a pair bigger than ours, I'd imagine he would just go all in, which he does in fact do, for $1,300 to be exact. And now I'm starting to get a little tilted, but we got the answer that we wanted. We found out where we're at in the hand, so I have nothing left to do but to just fold in this spot. But I'd be lying if I said it wasn't starting to get to me and affecting my mental. But Anthony's a real one, and he showed me 2 queens right before mucking his hand, which did help settle my nerves a little bit, knowing that we didn't get bluffed. For this next hand, there's a $10 straddle by yours truly on the button, 7-9 of clubs, and the entire table limps. So when the action gets back to me, we're gonna bump up the price of poker to the tune of $60, praying that this thins out the field a little bit. That way, if we hit even just a single pair, we can take this pot down. But it doesn't look like that's gonna be the case because the entire table calls 490 in the middle, and we go to this board, which comes 3-6-8 with 2 clubs. Al's in the big blind and he ships it for 235. 3 players get out of the way. It gets back over to Anthony, who tanks for a while, but ultimately does put in the call. When it gets over to me, there's no way in heck we're gonna fold an open ender with a flush draw. Shelby also seems to be interested because he puts in the call as well. 1,430 in the middle, and the turn comes the 3 of diamonds. Terrible card with the board pairing, but after both of our opponents check, I don't think either of them have a full house. This pot is way too big for anybody to be slow playing at this point, so I'd expect to see a bet here, even if it's just for $300 or $400 with a boat. I'd like to keep building up the pot in case we hit, but there's no point in shoving because we already have one opponent all in and there is no side pot, so I'd be risking my money for not a whole lot of return. So I decide to bet $200, keeping it real small, hoping both of our opponents call, building up this little side pot that we have going on here. Shelby calls, but Anthony folds, so there's $400 on the side. And the river comes a deuce of spades. Doesn't change too much on this board. Shelby checks again, so I can't imagine he has much of anything. I decide to just go all in, hoping to get the side pot, which I do in fact do. Al shows ace jack for a missed flush draw, but ace high is good enough to take down the main. Absolutely nutty hand. Can't say I played that well whatsoever, but here we are. For this next hand, there's a $20 open by Under the Gun. Anthony flats the $20 when I look down at ace 10 offsuit, and I decide to raise here to 65. The graphics are wrong. It is 65, not 75. And then we have an all in for exactly $65 here. Fadi calls this 65. Brian lets go of his hand, which I'm happy to see. Don't want to tussle with him anymore today. Wheezy calls it 65 and Anthony calls it 65 as well. Allegedly 375 in the middle. I think it's actually 325, and we go to this flop 5 ways, which comes ace 10 8 with 2 spades. Action checks over to Anthony, who decides to bet $100 here. I waste no time and bump it up to 225. The all-in player is still involved, but everybody else folds, so we take our money back and show our 2 pair. And we're gonna go to the rest of this run out heads up. 7 of spades on the turn does not look like a great card, and the 4 of spades is an even worse card because now we're losing to any spade. Luckily, our opponent has ace 7 of hearts, so no flush for him. our 2 pair holds. And the graphics are a bit off, but I think we did win a little over $300 in profit in this hand. For this next clip, Brian, being the gentleman and also the savage that he is, offered me a flip before he took off for the night. He gave me the option of any amount that I wanted to flip for, including my entire stack. After the amount is determined, we put it in the middle, get dealt 4 cards, run out an entire board, and then we each flip a card over until we can beat the opponent's hand, or lose if you can't beat your opponent's hand. Anyhow, I decided on 250. I was not bold enough to put all my money in there, and here's how it went.
That's what I figured.
Yeah.
Somebody give us 4 cards.
All of them up, right? Yeah, man.
Alright, now I try to beat the 2. It might be hard.
5 would be a decent card.
Flip another one, right?
Yep. 5.
Oh, shit.
Pocket Jack.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. That'll look pretty good unless he's got a queen under there.
Always out. Oh, I have a queen over here.
Sweet. Hi, Brian. Ready? Have a good one, bro.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have arrived at the final hand of the night. We are on the cutoff with 8-10 of spades. There's a $25 open, a raise to 50. I'm going to go ahead and put in the call for $50 here. Everybody's deep enough that I think this call in later position is okay. 3 more players put in the call, so we're going to go 5 ways to this flop with $250 in the middle, and the board is an absolute dream. It is 9-5 jack with 2 spades. We flop an open-ended straight flush draw. The action checks over to me, and I put in a small bet of 65, trying to continue building this pot. Looking back at it now, I wish I would have gone a little bigger, somewhere between 125 to 150, but that's not what we did. 2 players fold, 2 players call, 445 in the middle, and the 6 of hearts on the turn changes absolutely nothing for our hand, unfortunately. And at this point is when I realized what my mistake was on the flop. We have a monster draw into what was already a reasonably sized pot. I wish I would have bet half to 3/4 pot at the bare minimum, maybe even a full pot size bet. That way on this turn, I could have just shoved for the rest of my stack, but that's not what we did. So now we have an awkward stack sizing left behind for the bet sizing that we want to make. I go 275, Wheezy folds, but Anthony puts in the call, 995 in the middle, and the jack of hearts hits the river. Anthony checks it one more time. And at this point, I think it just makes a lot of sense to wave the white flag and give up. The top card paired on the river here. Anthony is just going to have a jack a lot of the time here. This is not a card that we want to be bluffing on, but all we have is 10 high. And at the time, I was so tilted, not just by the fact that we bricked out on this hand, but just how the session went overall, that I don't think I was thinking clearly, and I decided to shove anyway. Anthony snap calls. I show our hand. He shows jack 10. It's obviously good. I hit him with the nice hand, and for the last time tonight, shove my entire stack into the middle. Absolutely brutal session for a number of different reasons. I felt like we started off playing our normal A game and then just slowly unraveled the rest of the night. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. That's it for the poker this week, guys. Feel free to stick around if you want to see the bankroll update. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That was that was the worst session of my life. Sucks. Those really big hands were absolutely avoidable. I had no reason to have to get involved with Brian in regards to the gambling aspect of it, right? You know, what I mentioned in the intro, trying to play positive EV poker. But from a sheer playing the player perspective, the 3-6, it was a 4-liner to a straight out there. I could have folded that. I was just praying to boat up on the river. It was very easy for us to be beat in that situation, even if it was Brian, because it's very easy for him to have a 5 in his range. Whereas that queen jack hand, I don't know if I could have folded that, to be honest. Chips versus a very, very loose and aggressive player who's willing to just go all in with anything. It's really hard to fold. I was beating myself up for the decision, but a couple people reached out to me after the session and said that versus that player type, it's very hard to lay that hand down there. I know you guys didn't see too many of the hands he was involved in because, you know, it's
it's highlighting our hands and the stuff we get involved with. But from the player v player perspective, once again, hard to fold that. But I will say, never again will I call off almost $2,000 into a pot of less than $200, because that portion of it was just absolutely stupid. You're risking so much to gain so little. I only had maybe 100 invested into the pot, and I risked 1,900 to find out whether or not it was good. I don't know. That was just absolutely stupid. There's no way we're going to be profitable long term if we keep doing stuff like that. I need to chill. I think our success over the recent weekend and blowing past our milestones kind of got to me a little bit. From one end, it was like ego, where we were just running hot, and I think I was just going to keep running hot. And the other portion was I was getting blinded by the fact that I was like, oh shoot, we might have like a 10K, 11K, 12K month, you know, and I was just excited to completely blow past my milestones. And in my head, I was like, I'm going to do this every month. Absolutely not. We were running hot. There's no way in heck we're going to be making 8, 9, 10 grand every single month playing poker. Otherwise, everybody would be doing this, right? It's not that easy. But yeah, here we are. Let's go over the session stats, as awful as they may be. Well, ladies and gentlemen, here they are. We are down $5,300. Not only did we blow past our goal this month, we also lost it in one session. So not really much to dissect here. Lost 5,300. It's negative $748 an hour over the course of 7 hours. Pretty painful. Pretty painful. And here's our year-to-date stats for poker overall. This is for the month of January. We played a total of 9 sessions, totaling 54 hours. Our average profit an hour was $60 an hour. We still made $3,200 for the month of January. So overall, our month isn't that bad. I'm shooting for anywhere between $35 to $50 an hour for the hourly rate. The closer to 50 we can get, the better. But this is where we're at now in the month of January, at the end of this session. If you guys missed the beginning of January, just go back to the intro and watch it. I know it was really long, so you may have not watched the whole thing all the way through, but we posted, you know, everything else for the month of January there. This was right after this session. This is what our chart is looking like year to date. We won't include last year, since this year we have new goals. I'm just going to start from January 1st, 2025 and kind of go from there. That way we have a more accurate representation of how we're doing in the current time. That's all we got for you in the session update. Kind of nervous about posting this one, guys, not going to lie. That session was pretty brutal, but that's poker. Told you guys in the beginning I was going to be honest and transparent about everything on this vlog, and here we are. So thank you guys for stopping by. Appreciate your time as per usual. There's going to be another video dropping on Thursday, even though I know this one's posting Sunday. I'm trying to keep up to date with everything. Sorry, this one's a little bit late. Got it late from our editor, so it took me a couple days longer to get it up. Have some shorts coming your way as well. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because it helps the channel tremendously. All right, guys, good luck on the felt. Catch you next week. Peace.